Welcome to Catalyst Chats, where leaders spark ideas, share wins, and tackle people challenges that shape the future of work.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Catalyst Chats. I'm Lindsey Hammer, and today we are speaking with Zach Wright, founder and CEO of Grapevine Software. Zach, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, thank you.
I kind of always start as there's like two parts of me. So one is before college, one is after college. And the reason I say that is because before college, I had a fixed mindset. After college, I had a growth mindset. And during that time, I also had like depression and anxiety. So this is welcome to meeting Zach.
Love that.
But the reason I bring that up is because I dropped out of college about like 3 times and then I went back. So it took me like 8 years to graduate. But the journey all led me to organizational psychology. My thesis paper was on the happy productive worker thesis. So
That's
that
really
led
cool.
me into knowing names like Adam Grant, Laszlo Bock, Sean Aker. So the reason that I mentioned that is if I didn't go through the 8 years to graduate, then I wouldn't understand what organizational psychology is. I wouldn't have found my passion to actually care about making work better. And so there were parts of the journey where I was working blue collar jobs. So I worked with my dad doing like home improvements. I worked at a factory doing roofing where I was roofing like 8 to 10 houses a day with 8 other people. And then I also worked in the operating room. So the reason that I bring that up is because each part or each position that I held, I always wanted to make work better, but I was at the lower end of the totem pole and nobody really listened to me. And so after I graduated, I got my first corporate position as a staffing recruiter. And then from there, I got into the team lead. Fast forward, there was like an issue with a bully boss and then had to leave that, went to management consulting, had a terrible boss there again. And then got into a startup company in Charlotte, North Carolina, where that was the first time that I really did operational work. And
Yeah.
so from there and in technology, so from that moment, my career has really spanned across a lot of different factors in strategy and operations. And so then we hit the pandemic, everybody goes remote. I got laid off like 2 days before Christmas
Oh my
at
gosh.
that tech startup. Then luckily, I was able to get into a great role as a strategy staff executive at a company called Kumu, Qumu. They're an enterprise video solution, publicly traded company. And I ran their OKR program. I also moved into the director of sales operations,
Nice.
sales enablement, and then I managed the sales engineers too. So a lot of different hats there,
Yeah.
which leads me to Grapevine, which is we're a virtual HQ and we're specifically built for remote and distributed teams to stay aligned, connected from anywhere in the world. There's more nuance there, but the entire journey that I just listed out kind of navigated me to wanting to make work better, one.
Yeah.
Two, making work more flexible and inclusive, because if we think about the way that we work today, it's kind of scattered, whether that's in tools or people. And so you kind of miss that connection piece. But yeah, that's a long version
Yeah.
of a lot of years put together in maybe like a couple minutes.
Well, thank you for sharing. That's it's a really cool background, and also I appreciate your transparency as somebody who has pretty serious ADHD and
Yeah.
has also struggled with depression in my life. I think
Yep.
it's an important part of that makes us who we are and
Yeah.
how we got to where we are today.
Yep. And just to add to that, because I don't mention it a lot, I don't like stray away from it, but the beauty of remote and flexible work is that on the certain days that you do have certain days, certain weeks, whatever the case
Yeah,
is, you get the choice to kind of work at your peak hours. Or the other part that a lot of people don't talk about is if you have depression or anxiety, there's just certain days that you don't really want to interact with people. And
totally.
it's not that you can't do your work. Like you can hop on a Zoom for 30 minutes or an hour, or you can work alone.
Yeah,
And but like if you think about back in the day where the office was the only option, then that person would call out sick or they would be absent or they would go to work and then make everybody else's day bad,
yeah,
right? So it's
totally.
like these little nuances that really make me love remote and flexible work, not just for me, but other people out there that kind of go through these experiences where the people who don't have this type of stuff, not that it's a crutch or a bad thing, it's
Totally.
just part of life, but the people that don't experience it don't understand what
Yeah.
it's like. So it kind of equals the playing field a little bit.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I think it's one of the best things we can do from a diversity and inclusion standpoint
Yep.
as well.
Exactly.
Cool. Well, speaking of Grapevine, tell us a little bit more. I'd love for the audience to have a better understanding of what your company does.
Yeah. So basically, with Grapevine, if we think about the way that the office was, it was a physical location, it was a centralized physical building that people would go into, and that's how they communicated, they collaborated, they connected. They would bump into the water cooler, a lot of people talk about that, and then they would get to know who the person is while also completing projects and so on and so forth. Well, that's a good thing, don't get me wrong. Like, I'm not opposed to the office. I think if we grow the way that I want us to, we'll eventually have an office.
Yeah.
So I'm not anti-office. But then you think about the rise of SaaS applications, which means that every department had their own tool,
Yeah.
right? And so like HR had their tool, HRIS tools, sales had theirs, Salesforce, HubSpot, you name the 1,000 of CRMs out there. Marketing had their own, operations had their own, the list goes on and on. And so that was fine while we were still in the office. Then the pandemic hit. And whenever the pandemic hit, that was whenever companies were like, okay, we can't just close shop. We still have to find a way to work. And all of a sudden, where these legacy companies were telling their employees before, like, you can't work remote because it's like a luxury or privilege. And then now they had to like scrape by and change everything. But the big point of going remote was now people are in different locations.
Mhm.
And during the pandemic and even after it, the global talent pool became more of a reality, meaning that not only are people scattered or in different locations, they're also in different time zones. And those time zones aren't like West Coast, East Coast, Midwest anymore. It's like America, UK, Pakistan, Tokyo. Like
Totally.
there's some Australia, like there's some big differences there. And so these worlds, this is how I describe it. The worlds of SaaS and remote are two different worlds that collided at the same time. And the issue with that, in my opinion, my hypothesis, is that now that we had all these tools for these specific departments, and then we had people separated, you started to get clicks into the environments, right? Because the people in HR are working in their HR tool. The people in sales are working in their sales tool. The people in blah, blah, like, again, you continue down that. And so now what needs to happen is we need to bring back this centralization aspect of it, but it doesn't have to be an office building or a physical location like it used to be. And it also doesn't need to be synchronized. Like, there's a lot of virtual HQs out there. Like, that's what we call ourselves. But those virtual HQs are, one, they're like Sims related. So they're like a game, and don't get me wrong, they serve their purpose, but they don't actually solve the real problem. And then there's other ones where they're just literally recreating the traditional office, meaning that you still have to be in the office at the same time, you're just working virtually. And that's, again, not solving the problem.
Yeah.
And so whenever it comes to Grapevine, what we're doing is we're providing you that centralized platform, and we're bringing in these elements that are typically outside the flow of work. That's how we describe it. And what I mean by that is, like, you think about the internet. The reason that internet's become outdated, disconnected, stagnant, ignored is because, like, here's your chat tool, right? I don't know if this is a video podcast or not, but this is a chat tool. And then way over here is your intranet. And somebody will update it because it's their job, but then you share it once and then it quickly becomes out of date. And
Totally.
then, like, for the other aspects of it is, like, you have these other tools that you're using and that are supposed to bring the company together, like an employee experience platform. Again, like WorkVivo lives outside of the flow of work, right? And so what we're trying to do is take all those elements and connect them to the same place that you communicate and collaborate. So, one, they become more adopted or higher adoption from your teams. And then two, it's already where you live and work. So the goal for us is to create this centralized platform. We kind of anchor against intranets, but we call ourselves a virtual HQ because we're specifically redesigning or reimagining how the office should look, and it's
Yeah.
not physical location.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, thanks for sharing. I think there's a lot of things that excite me about Grapevine Software as far as my experience being with large corporations and the amount of time that you can spend just digging for resources. Like they exist, but where do they exist and how do you
Yeah.
find them? I mean, it can take up good chunks of time throughout the day.
Yeah, and just to add to that, because there's two statistics here. Both are from Asana, I'm pretty sure. But at this state right now, even with AI, the majority of employees or the average employee spends about 2.5 hours per day just trying to search and find information. That's 10 hours a week. That's
Yeah.
more than one workday. And then in addition to that is that they say most employees spend 60% of their workday on work about work, meaning like these conversations instead of like actually building
Doing.
forward. Yeah.
Yeah.
And and then I'll just throw some shade here at Notion because everybody loves Notion. Apparently, they hire a lot of influencers. I don't know. Come at me. But the part that I love to say about Notion is whenever you step back and you think about it, a lot of people spend more time building in Notion than they actually do being productive. And so that's where we're
Yeah.
different again. And this is not a podcast about Grapevine, but like we're actually focused on the work. We
Yeah.
specifically give you this infrastructure or this system that's kind of predetermined for you where you don't have to think about, okay, how am I going to build this? It's like it's already there. Okay, it's built. Now let's use it and actually fulfill our mission and vision
Yeah.
and goals of the company. I get excited about it.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. And I read one of your recent posts about SaaS companies, and I have to say I really respect your no BS approach to
Yeah.
what your company does and doesn't do, and
Yes.
how AI solutions can work for us, but don't always.
Well, yeah, and I know that these aren't like questions, but like everything you say, I just got I have to like jump in, like
Go for it.
because like we don't have AI right now, and that's a little
Yeah.
bit scary to say in 2025. We have it in
I
our
don't think you're alone
pipeline.
in that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, but it's so crazy because a lot of these companies that are getting like raising tons of capital or they're growing, like
Yeah.
it's good, but I wonder how sustainable it is, right? And now
Totally.
I don't think that AI is going away ever,
Yeah.
right? But what I do think is that the differentiation aspect of AI is going away, meaning that like okay, smartphones, like if you had an iPhone versus like a Nokia, like the smartphone gave you an advantage. But now
Yeah.
what's the advantage? Everybody has a smartphone in a first world
Totally.
country, right? And so, and same thing with internet. Now we see like Starlink going all these places that's making it more accessible. And so AI is just going to be inevitable. And what's really going to need to happen, and this is like, I'll get on my soapbox just for a moment.
Go for
Like,
it.
this is where I think that a lot of AI companies are going to fail. It's because they're building based off of trends rather than building based off of purpose.
Mhm.
And and I also think that there's a lot of companies out there, whether or not it's because there's like this infatuation about companies just going and exiting. Like, I'm going to have this idea so I can become rich. The way that I'm going to do that is I'm going to build off of this trend and then I'm going to sell it to a different company.
Yeah.
And now I'm rich. Like, okay, obviously, I want to have a lot of money. Don't get me wrong. Like, we got to
Yeah.
support our families and all that. But the true purpose for me with Grapevine is I want to bring back the heart and soul to these companies. And I've talked about this before on different outlets, but if you think about the way that Apple made you feel whenever Steve Jobs was there, or you think about the way that Google made you feel whenever they were still in this startup mode, and
Yeah.
and it wasn't that it was the product that, I mean, yes, like you had to have a good product, you have to
Totally.
had to have to serve a purpose, but what they're really instilling is this type of life that they can give you, belief in yourself, this motivation, this ambition that you can be something bigger, you can be
Yeah.
something more. I want to bring that back into the way that companies operate today. I'm a capitalist, don't get me wrong, but I
Yeah.
think that you can be a capitalist. I think you can be a business owner and still want to inspire the other generations or the people
Totally.
next to you.
Yeah.
So that's my soapbox.
No, I love that. That resonates with me a lot because it does feel that way, right? Like it feels like everybody's kind of out there doing their thing, and not to say they aren't doing great things, but What's beyond that, I think,
Yeah,
is something I like to think about a lot, maybe more than I
exactly.
should.
No, I think that more people need to think about this
Yeah.
because, like, we see the issues with, well, one, companies are just, I think that they're the most distrusted things out there today
Yeah.
because we see like Microsoft laying off people, see Amazon laying off people. Like you name the company,
Yeah.
there's a lot of layoffs coming, and they disguise it as this AI optimization,
Yeah.
and that's not true. Like a lot of it still kind of comes from they overhired in the pandemic and now they're trying to course correct. And one of the
Totally.
worst ones is Meta, whenever they're saying that they're firing low performers, and then you go and check in with these people and they had glowing reviews.
Yeah. You're
So
like, that's the first time I've heard of low performance.
yeah, and I think like there needs to be some type of accountability here. And this is not political, but that the big beautiful bill that just was passed, and like correct me, like fact check me people. But like there's something in there that says that AI isn't going to be regulated for the next 10
Yeah.
years.
Years. Yeah.
And that's the scary part to me,
Totally.
right? And so like
As soon in AI, I'm afraid of that.
yes. And like if we because we're missing an opportunity where social media age to be able to regulate that is kind of over.
Yeah.
I mean, we could
Yeah.
still try. I'm not saying that we don't try, but this is the next revolution, right? I will
Yeah.
say that. Like as much as AI hype is out there, it is here, it is doing things, and this is the next revolution. And so we have an opportunity. I'm not saying like regulate it fully, but
Yeah.
there needs to be accountability, and not just in AI, but these leaders who are the richest people in the world now,
Totally.
there needs to be some type of accountability because there's real lives that are being affected by their
Yeah.
decisions.
Yeah. No, I
Is this
couldn't
what you
agree
thought you
more.
were going to talk about today?
I could talk about this all day.
Good, good.
Well, and speaking of, future company challenges, like I'd love to understand for you too, as the leader of Grapevine Software, like what challenges you're facing today and where do you want to be in 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, I mean, I think with anything, whenever it comes to being like a new company,
Yeah.
it's always it's the toughest part is continuing to get those customers to believe in you and your software. And then it's also the incumbents are there, right? So like we talked about Notion, we talked about Microsoft, we talk about like these other different companies out there. Slack is a big one too.
Yeah.
Like we could technically compete with all of them. And so like how do we convince somebody to say, okay, move away from this? Or like, because one of the things that we try to say is like, we don't necessarily have to replace your tools. The thing
Yeah.
that we want to be able to do is give your employees that one place that they can go to know that they're going to find the information, or to know that they're going to figure out what's going on in the company, right?
Yeah.
Because like, if you think about these technologies that are built today, Slack is one of them. Like secretly, people don't like Slack. Like that's what they tell me. And it's
Yeah.
because of this channel overload. It's because of these distractions that happen, like getting pinged 10 times in 5 minutes. And then
Totally.
just to get into the state of, or the flow state again, it takes like 23 to 29 minutes.
Yeah.
So, I mean, how can anybody get any work done if they're constantly being pinged? Same thing with Notion. Like Notion is, a lot of people will say that it's not scalable. Like the more input that you get in there, the slower and slower and slower and slower it gets, or it's just hard to find certain things. And
Yeah.
so like the biggest challenge for us is to overcome those things because it's a trusted brand. They are building fast. We're building fast too, but like we're new. So
Yeah.
I think that's always kind of like table stakes. The other like smaller things, or they seem like smaller things, but they're huge, is like, okay, technically we're a horizontal SaaS product, meaning that we can serve a lot of different use cases for a lot of different industries and a lot of
Yeah.
different departments. And so how do we narrow down on the use case that will get us into the door for a lot of people? And like the one thing that we're doing now, as I mentioned a little bit before, is we're anchoring against the internet
Yeah.
because it is outdated, but it's supposed to be this thing that centralizes your company's most important information. But again, it's built for like 2000s, not even the 2010s, right? And
Yeah.
so like that's I would say that those are the tough parts. Getting people to respond with, I mean, with all this AI slop. I know that I sound like an AI hater. I'm not.
It's a love-hate relationship, I think, for most
Yeah.
people out there.
Well, you know, it's the bad actors, I would say, because like
Yeah.
my background is in operations, and then again, I've done like RevOps consulting, I've done sales operations, and so like part of my background is setting up these sequences that people are using now. The difference is now they're setting up those sequences and they're using AI, and so this is just a little bit of a tangent. I still write my outreach, and I know
Yeah.
that that sounds like old school, outdated, but I actually want to try to do this and break through and speak to as many people as
Yeah.
possible because I actually care. Now, these other people it's just like spray and pray. And I can tell from the operation side of me, this is where I was going before,
Yeah.
is like I've set up those sequences and the simple little thing, this is just advice to anybody out there who's using AI and sequences. If somebody responds to you, turn off the sequence. Like there's an
Mhm.
automatic thing that you can do. Just turn it off. I've had a lot of situations where somebody will reach out to me and I'll actually be interested in what they're talking about. I'll
Yeah.
respond to them and then I'll get the AI response back and I'm just like, no, you
Turned you
didn't care
off.
enough. So yeah,
Yeah.
that doesn't really go into like, well, I mean, I guess it kind of goes into like the challenges of
Totally.
breaking through in this noisy AI slop world.
Yeah. Yeah. How to catch attention when attention spans are getting shorter and
Yeah.
there's more things to grab attention out there.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, as far as the future, like where do you want to be 5 to 10 years?
So with Grapevine specifically, what I want us to be able to do is to have a platform that can literally replace and reimagine the need for a physical office. And it doesn't mean that you don't have an office, but what it does mean is that you have this one centralized place that goes with you no matter where you are. And
Yeah.
it doesn't matter if you're in the office or not. The reason that I want that to be the truth for us is because then we can really achieve our mission, which is making work more flexible, inclusive, and fulfilling for everyone. And the
Yeah.
way that
Love
those
that.
things kind of compound on each other is one, if you can have everything at your fingertips for work in your hand or on your laptop or your tablet, and it's designed specifically for asynchronous, but also synchronous. It's designed for self-serve. It's designed for the way that we work today, pretty much. Then the flexibility aspect is just a give me. Right.
Yeah.
I think that a lot of leaders out there today feel like they can't dive all the way into flexibility because a lot of companies or tools today were adapted just to kind of seem like they were riding the trend instead of
Yeah.
built, instead of for the way that we're working today or we're going to work. We see it in the data and the numbers that hybrid is going to stick. So whether or not you're in the office or even in the same time zone, your teams aren't going to work in the same place ever again, like all the time, right?
Yeah.
And so you're still going to need some type of centralized platform. So that's the flexibility aspect of it. The other part is inclusion. If we think about the way that people are, it kind of starts where we started this conversation,
Yeah.
which there's neurodivergent people. There's people who are extroverts. There's people who are ambiverts. There's people who are introverts. And then there's other people that have things going on. I think Kamala was saying like we're in the sandwich generation where like we
Mm.
have like some people have kids, but then they also are taking care of their parents.
Parents.
And so like whenever that comes in, that's a full-time job. I've seen it with my dad with three of his parents. He had a stepdad. And so like
Yeah.
three of his parents, right? And it literally took a lot of the family's time.
Yeah.
And so like what imagine if you didn't have to stop working, but you were able to still be able to like just go on for an hour on your phone instead of having
Yeah.
to pull up the full laptop. I know that there's going to be like VR goggles and all that kind of stuff coming out too. So that's a whole different thing. But
Yeah.
but that's the inclusiveness. But then we also look at the data where whenever we see like flexible work offered or hybrid or remote, it's more beneficial to people of color, women, like there's a
Totally.
disabled people.
Yeah.
There's so many benefits to the flexibility or the inclusion whenever it comes here. And then the last part is fulfillment, right? So
Mhm.
it's almost more of like a result of if we can fulfill our mission. The fulfillment aspect of it is a couple of things. So like if you have more autonomy, if you have
Yeah.
more control of your work, you're going to have a better outcome. This is kind of coming from my happy, productive worker thesis from a long time ago.
Totally.
And then there's one thing that I talk about a lot, which is a job characteristics model. It's by Hackman and Oldham from 1976. This was them
Wow.
like skill identity, skill variety, you had autonomy. Like there's a lot of things out there that go into the satisfaction of a job. And then that satisfaction also equates to motivation, retention, engagement, and then
Yeah,
productivity. So like whenever a lot of leaders think about these things as being soft, it's not. Like
yeah,
if you want your workers to be more productive, treat them well. It's that simple.
totally. Give them flexibility. Yeah,
Yeah. And then just the last thing here is whenever it comes to the fulfillment aspect of it, there's a couple of things that aren't in the platform that will be in the platform. So like feedback, rewards recognition,
yeah,
performance management. There's a couple of other things that we're thinking about, but if we can do that, and that's how we can tackle the future of work and build this new world. And I do think that this is the last thing I'll say because I've been giving long answers. But the last thing that I'll say on this is I do think that it's going to be extremely important for local communities to step up
yeah,
because there is this isolation in remote work if you allow it to happen. And so what you have to do is find a way, because a lot of people talk about return to office and like our buildings are vacant and there's a big problem and it's like it harms our local economy. But I
yeah,
think that that's relying too much on one thing. And if you were building a company, you wouldn't say, or let's say that you were investing, you would say diversify your investments. So
yeah,
if one goes down, it doesn't harm everything. And that's what we've done with real estate, corporate real estate.
yeah,
Everything went down whenever 2020 happened. And now we're trying to figure out what's going on. So let's diversify that, but let's do it in a better way that's more impactful for the community. And I'm sure that the economy will recover. The local economy is what I'm talking
yeah.
about here. So that was a long answer, but
No, but it hits on a lot of really interesting things, and they all go hand in hand. You can't really have one
yeah,
without the other. And I think we're at this really interesting time where you talked about like this mistrust with companies. And I think that companies also have this big mistrust with employees. It's like holding
yeah,
them back from allowing that flexibility.
yep,
And it feels like somebody just needs to like make the first move.
yeah,
COVID was interesting. I mean, horrible, right? But
yeah,
at the
yeah,
same created these interesting downstream impacts where we knew that there needed to be more flexibility, but I don't know that it was necessarily going to happen, at least as soon as it did, without
yeah.
something like a pandemic. And now we're in this place of like, where do we go from here?
I feel like companies have like mistrust or employees' mistrust of companies is more
Yeah,
warranted than employees or companies' mistrust with employees.
totally.
Maybe not, but like, I mean, because there's always bad actors. But I think that we've seen it time and time again from companies getting a slap on the wrist, and that's kind of it, but no real change happening. And that's another reason why I think that it's so important for us to really embrace flexible work or remote work or just this different version of work, because like we see this happen. So whenever there's tons of jobs out there and the power is in the employee's hand, then companies adjust and they
Yeah.
can give flexibility and they can give hybrid and they can give remote. But then we saw it whenever it switched, the power
Oh, yeah.
went back to the companies. Now it's return to office, return to office, return to office, or you're fired.
Yeah.
Right. And so like it's kind of funny because I also like do a lot of posts on like RTO and not as much now, but like RTO versus remote.
Yeah.
And the real underlining topic or the root cause that I'm trying to solve for, that we're trying to solve for at Grapevine, is how can we take the bad parts that we knew about work and actually shift that from a systematic approach, not
Yeah.
just from a physical location approach, right? And whenever it comes to remote work or flexible work, what has to happen is you have to be more intentional. So you
Yeah.
have to be more structured. And I would say like flexibility needs structure too. And so
Yeah.
like you have to be more structured, meaning like you have to make sure that you have your goals like visible. And then you have to make sure that you relay those goals out to your team. And then you have to make sure that you like this is how we do it. We break it down into quarters. And then we
Yeah.
measure those quarters monthly, and then we break it even further down and we talk about those goals on a one-to-one basis every single week. And so like that's what I love about the future of work or remote work. It's not even remote work. It's just the future of work
That's
because
what you work. Yeah.
yeah, because it could be in office, it could be remote, but it's about creating this structure that actually has this manager employee support, vice versa, versus what we see today in I think we're moving in the right direction, but what we still see today, which is I'm the boss, you have to do what I say,
Hmm.
like your job should be your life,
Yeah.
which I'm a workaholic. So like, I mean, even my mug, again, I don't know if this is, but it says like you say workaholic like it's a bad thing. And
I
so
love that.
like, but it gives people the ability to choose how they
How to
work.
work.
And as long
Yeah.
as we focus on the outcomes rather than butts and seats and surveillance and all that, then we're going to see a better future, in my
Yeah.
opinion.
Totally. I totally agree. Yeah. I think it's the best way to make people more productive is giving them
Yeah,
flexibility.
100%.
Yeah. Well, Zach, you were talking about metrics. I'd love if you're open to sharing, like, what are one or two of the main metrics that y'all focus on?
Yeah, so it's kind of tricky for a startup because you have to eventually, basically, you have to start with your baselines.
Yeah.
And so, like, some of the metrics that we track are obviously like pipeline. Like, we want to be able to see how many people are we bringing in or prospects are we bringing in each week? How
Yeah.
many demos are we having? How many deals are we going to close this month versus last month versus this, like, next month or whatever? So those are just like your typical ones. Then we also, because we try to still do SEO as a long-term play. And so we'll continue to track we use like Google Analytics. I know it's not the best,
Okay.
but it's free.
Yeah.
So we track our website views, we track our conversions, we track our landing pages, we track our YouTube channel that we have out there, blog posts, different things like that.
Yeah.
All in relation to trying to forecast the number of customers that we're going to close this quarter. And then the big goal, which it's going to be tricky to hit, but this is our big goal since the beginning of this year, which is we want to have 40 paying customers by the end of the year. And
Okay.
so that's kind of like our North Star
Yeah.
for the sales marketing revenue side. Now, whenever it comes to product, what I and the project manager will do is like right now we're doing space enhancements. And so like spaces to us is like our wiki approach. So we talked about Notion. It's kind of like that, but
Okay.
you can basically create multiple spaces. And that's why we're more scalable than they are, because you can
Yeah.
create multiple spaces. So you can have like a marketing hub, you can have a sales hub, you can have an HR hub, you can have an onboarding hub, and then you can also have like community spaces and all that kind of stuff. But, so for the product, what we're doing now is how can we improve spaces where they become more valuable, and we don't just do that in a siloed vault. We
Yeah.
talk to our customers, we talk to our prospects, we analyze the trends out there, but then we also stick true to our vision and what we're trying to
Yeah.
build. So for those, we don't necessarily have like specific metrics that we're trying to follow, as in the terms of like, okay, we gotta implement 5 new features by the
Yeah.
end of this quarter. It's more so, okay, we have these elements. This is our product vision. This is our roadmap. Are we tracking to each feature that we
Yeah.
have
That makes
based
sense.
off of the estimate? So that's kind of how we track that. And then I just have, as a founder, because like we have a development team and then I'm doing everything else. And
Yeah.
so and so like I have a founder space where I'll track everything from go to market, like it's a simple like yes or no. Did I do this? Yes or no. So
Yeah.
it'd be like reach out to 10 prospects today, or reach out or follow up with 5 previous people that I spoke with, yes or
Yeah.
no. Then we have like the product, then we have I think it's actually I'm gonna go to it right now. Because I'm in Grapevine, but all this is tracked in Grapevine. But
Nice.
yeah, so I'll just go to like the founder checklist in the space. And then so I have a founder ops, I have a go-to-market ops, I have a product use case, and
Yeah.
then customer, and then financial. So those are the things that I'm checking every
Okay.
single week, that feeds into the month, that feeds into the quarter. Ultimately,
Okay. Cool. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah.
yeah.
It's helpful insight too, just to understand like both from other people starting companies and
Yeah.
also insight to Grapevine. So, well, is there anything else that you want the audience to know about either the future of work or your company specifically?
Yeah, I think it's just more so if you're not thinking about your company being flexible or hybrid in some way, shape, or form, I think over time you're going to start to fall behind. So if you're kind of on the fence, go ahead and jump over it and start allowing flexibility. And the way that you can do this is just a simple answer. It won't be a long answer. Is make sure that you have trust with your employees. So build a culture where people are open to communicating with you as a founder or a CEO or a leader where
Yeah.
they can tell you the truth, right? Like you mentioned earlier, like we have a no BS, like it's almost like a no BS policy.
Yeah.
Like we cut through the BS. And that's the same thing. Like you want to get so close to your employees where they feel comfortable enough telling you that you're wrong or telling you that like, okay, if we do this, it's going to mess up this over here. So start with trust, be able to have conflict with them in a productive way. And then whenever you go hybrid or remote, or if you start that way and you make sure that you implement that sooner rather than
Yeah.
later, everything else becomes easier. It's like the Jim Collins book, like Good to Great, like get the right people on the bus
Yep.
and then you can switch around the seats, but they're still going to go in the same direction. So that's what I would say.
Totally. Yeah. I love that. And I think that resonates a lot, especially thinking about the leaders I've worked with that I would work with again and again.
Yeah.
And the leaders that, I know you mentioned too, having some leaders that led you to making changes in your career. So I think
Yeah,
it's critical.
exactly. Yep.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you so much, Zach. Thanks for joining us and really appreciate your time and your insight into your company and look forward to seeing where your company goes from here. I think it's a great product.
Awesome. Well, thank you. And check it out, grapevinesoftware.io. And now I'll stop talking.
Exactly.
Thank you for listening to Catalyst Chats. Like, share, and don't forget to follow.